The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, episode 103.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Enterprise episode, Civilization. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, if you can, please remember to subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or at the SQPN YouTube channel, where you should make sure to hit the bell to get notifications. You do not want to miss a single episode of The Secrets of Star Trek in the future. So this episode, we're talking about the Enterprise episode called Civilization. We're still in the first season of Enterprise. And the basic idea is, this is a Prime Directive episode, right? I mean, it's basically, we're kind of tiptoeing around the idea of whether Starfleet should follow the which seems the Vulcan idea of the Prime Directive, interfering with less developed civilizations. Right.
And also, we might comment, you know how Star Trek Discovery these days, and to some extent Star Trek Picard, have these really high-flown episode titles, and here we have one word, civilization. And it's not even that relevant to the episode. The only relevance is they encounter a civilization. That's it.
That's true. That's true. You know, in some ways, I think this is actually maybe a superior episode title than some of these Discovery Picard ones. Like our next Discovery episode, which I think is next week, is in fact, is this really long thing. It's like, come on, guys, let's simplify a bit. We don't need a book in the title. But yes.
It was the thing back when, just Enterprise was done, that you kept the titles as short and completely, meaningless as possible. And now with Discovery, they got to be, Art Nouveau, and they got to be, have these real fancy titles, Well,
it's
just
interesting.
Because they can.
Yeah, episode titles are more a thing these days. I mean, Star Trek has always been, this is a bit of a tangent, but Star Trek has always had, like, the episode titles for the fans have been big. Oh, Amok Time, that's my favorite episode. Whereas most TV shows, do you remember a single episode title from, say, the A-Team?
I never watched the A-Team.
I thought they were like season. I thought their titles were like season 1, episode 3.
Yeah. Or Knight Rider, or any TV show from the 80s. Probably not. Even in the 90s, Seinfeld, I'm not sure, had episode titles. They might have. The Friends was always the one where, or the one with, where they kind of had some fun with it. But today, episode titles are really a thing in most TV shows for some reason. So maybe I think there's a little bit of that in this. It's based on the time in which the things are produced. In any case, back to this episode, the Enterprise. We kind of start with this sort of mundane. We get a glimpse at the daily life on Enterprise, where they obviously have a morning briefing, a stand-up morning briefing, by the way, which I think is a great idea. If you're going to have a daily meeting in any work situation, it should be a stand-up meeting around a table, which prevents it from going too long.
Too long.
Yeah. Unless you're a Vulcan.
Yes, well, yes, Vulcans can stand for days.
Which we see here, because the one keeping the meeting going is T'Pol.
Right.
She's bringing up the irrelevant, low-interest stuff.
Do you think she's in on a joke with, like, Tucker and the others on Archer?
It seems that way, but it's hard to know whether that's meant to be something her character is really doing, or if she's the butt of the joke as she's bringing up the ridiculous who cares stuff, and then we're going to spring the really interesting thing.
Well,
right.
Well, then of course, there's also the the issue of, she's going to want to distract them away from the, inhabited planet, because we don't want Starfleet to interfere with this planet. And instead, let's go look at this, leftover from a supernova and these, dead stars instead.
So they have a briefing where T'Pol is, like you said, listing all of these boring things. And I think she doesn't lead with, hey, we've detected a pre-industrial society, because from her point of view, it's not more interesting than looking at these natural phenomena, because protocol says we don't go and interfere with them. So why would I bother? Logically, we would look at things that we can go see. But the rest of the human crew are all like, yes, this is what we're out here for. We're here to go look at some, aliens and civilizations. Yes.
So they found this Minshara-class planet, and I don't know if this is the first instance we have on the series of the term Minshara-class planet, but it may be. Mm-hmm. And this is the obvious backstory now for the original series' famous Class M planet designation. Yep. So they haven't yet shortened it to Class M. Apparently there's a planet out there called Minshara that's very Earth-like. And they also say that they've got 500 million life signs on it, which is approximately the population of the Earth in the 19th century. And they say there's like a whole civilization down there. And it's like, with 500 million people, you think? I mean, that's like us in the 19th century. We'd had civilization for about 10,000 years at that point.
In fact, there's probably several civilizations down there.
Yeah.
And it is, well, I was going to make a different point, but that's okay. They did mention Minshara class actually a couple episodes ago. I think in the one where they went to the Lost Colony, they mentioned that it was Minshara, and that came up. But yeah, they keep bringing it up, and we still have not settled on Class M as an easier acronym. So it is a pre-industrial society. You think with clipper ships, that does look a bit like perhaps 19th century European.
Well, it's kind of interesting because you got the clipper ships, and you got like the gas lighting
lamps
and everything.
Yeah.
But then the dress looked very stereotypical medieval.
Right. Well, and there's nothing that says that everything has to advance at the same rate, all the different technologies. So that makes sense. In any case, the crew wants to go down. They're all excited to go down. But T'Pol, whose designated job is wet blanket, reminds them that Vulcan protocol is you only initiate first contact when a society has reached warp drive, i.e. there's no Prime Directive in Starfleet yet. And Trip is always the one to point out, well, we're not Vulcans, so that doesn't really apply to us, does it? So when I first saw this, I remember thinking, see, they're going to learn a lesson here about interfering with pre-warp civilizations. But that's not really what happens, is it?
No,
not really.
Not so. In fact, they do good by interfering. And so, but you do see them kind of feeling their way towards the Prime Directive. They do agree to minimize their impact on the society and things like that. So it's not like they flagrantly violated and then it blows up in their face.
Yeah. Right.
Also,
someone else has. Yeah.
Yeah. The species in this episode are called the Akali. Hoshi says she detects hundreds or thousands of languages down there, but there's one word you're going to remember. You're going to want to remember, and that's Akali, because that's their name. And just like here on Earth, where the word for human is human in every single Earth language, I mean, that's totally familiar. What I want to meet is the sister species of the alkali, the Acidae, but we don't meet them in this episode.
Going back to talking about this episode in the Prime Directive, I thought there's an episode coming up, and it's probably still in this season, where it does blow up in their face, and then of course Archer having to give a big epic speech at the end of the episode, gives a speech about someday we will have a directive, a Prime Directive that will just like, did you have to just slap us over the face with it? I mean, but I thought this was that episode, but obviously it wasn't, because of course she's got T'Pol's got objections to going down there, but all of a sudden those objectives immediately disappear when. Why do they have a antimatter reactor on this planet?
Right. So let's kind of deal with some of that. So Archer says in this, his excuse is, look, Starfleet could have sent an unmanned probe out here to make maps and take pictures. They sent us for a reason. We're here to make contact with people. So that's, that's his reasoning with it. So that's why he moves forward. Yes, they have all of these languages, which I have to always put a pin in the whole language translation stuff because it just shouldn't work. It doesn't, there's no reason. The lips aren't, even the translators, their lips should be noticeably different from what people are hearing. Fine, whatever. We have to have a TV show, so let's just, put a pin in that and move on. I did like this moment when T'Pol is picking out a landing zone for them, and she recommends this remote farm, and Archer says, this must be why UFOs are always landing at cornfields.
Yeah.
in Earth history. So there's a couple of moments like that in this episode where we're seeing what if we were the UFOs? Or what if we were the aliens?
There's also a nice bit where they're talking about maybe we should take one of these plague victims up to the ship, and T'Pol is like, actually, wasn't alien abduction a terrifying fear of your people for centuries?
Yeah, exactly. Just don't mutilate any cows while you're down there. So like you said, T'Pol detects neutrino emissions, which could be evidence of an antimatter reactor, and so that changes everything. Archer, Trip, T'Pol, and Hoshi go together to investigate, fly down in a shuttle because this is Enterprise. We don't use the transporter much. Archer
and he specifically picks Hoshi because he explains that if our translators go out, you're going to be able to handle yourself better as the linguist, better than any of the rest of us. So that's clearly setting us up for Hoshi's going to have a notable part later in the episode when a translator fails.
Oh,
but no. Hoshi goes down and comes back up after a couple of scenes and then doesn't appear again in the episode and has nothing to do, despite the fact this is set up to be a Hoshi episode.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, it is very strange. Like, she basically, after that first going down and coming back up, she doesn't really do much of anything in this episode. She doesn't have to use her language skills really at all. It's it's an odd omission. So Archer and Trip, they're the ones who end up finding the reactor. Although Hoshi and T'Pol, they discover some people who are infected or sick with some sort of illness, which will be, we'll have to Chekhov's gun. That's going to come up later. And then they have to break into this curio shop where the reactor is, and Archer gets the line, 78 light years to get here, and our first act is breaking and entering, which I thought was a nice little line there. And while they're inside, they find a door with a force field in front of it, which should not be there. And meanwhile, this woman approaches them, and she's holding them at crossbow point, this little tiny crossbow.
Dainty crossbow.
Yes.
Dainty fold-up purse-size crossbow.
It will sting the first guy, but the second guy is going to be on top of her and disarming her after she fires the one bolt. So I'm not sure it's a very effective weapon, but she's an apothecary, not a ninja or assassin. So. But she says she's been watching the shop because people have been getting sick. I have to point out there's a couple times this happens. I think it's a Trip who says this reactor is protected by some kind of energy field.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Some kind of has returned.
They hadn't gotten over their some kind of addiction yet by this point.
Yes. So, but they get out of the situation when T'Pol stuns the woman.
The woman's name is Rian, and as you mentioned, she's an apothecary. But the reason she's focused on this shop is she's been seeing mysterious deliveries of crates to the shop in the middle of the night, and that's why she was watching it. She's watching for these mysterious crate deliveries. And she's also noticed the outbreak of people. She's got like a map of where the people have gotten sick. And they're all in the proximity of this shop. And this is actually something that's neat because it's from actual human medical history. In 1854, there was what's known as the Broad Street cholera outbreak in London. And this was one of the key moments in figuring out germ theory of disease as opposed to miasma theory of disease, because the miasma theory held you got sick from breathing bad air. But the germ theory was that there's like something like little germs in the water that can get you sick. And one of the ways they showed it was when a particular set of water companies in London one of them was like pulling polluted water directly from the Thames, and the other was using other less polluted sources. And so they used this mapping function to say which households have the people with cholera, what water supply are they on, and they were able to pin this down. And she's doing essentially the same thing here by mapping who's getting sick and noticing what's at the center of that and what weird activity is going on in that area. So I was really impressed by this. This is something that actually has a parallel in our own history.
I was thinking as I watched this, between trying to find out the mystery behind these mysterious illnesses and aliens and abductions, I think Rian should start a podcast afterward called Rian's Mysterious World.
Yeah.
She could explore these. So anyway, Archer takes her back to her apothecary shop and tells her that he's an investigator from another city named John. And she says, how far away is this other city? Obviously, John is not really a name that she's familiar with. And yeah, this is when Trip suggests bringing one of the sick people up to the ship, and we'd say this is where alien abductions come in. And Trip and Archer then go to the shop, this curio shop, and confront the shopkeeper. In the day, yes. And they confront the shopkeeper, and whose DNA shows he's not from this planet, and he gets out his version of a tricorder and says, neither are you. And he claims to have been part of a survey team, and he was so taken with the planet he decided to stay there, and that his reactor powers a replicator that provides food and other items for him. But Trip says the reactor is ridiculously overpowered for that purpose.
I like, so this guy's name is Garros, and I like how calm he is when they out him privately as an alien. And it's like, oh, you are too. And he comes across as Mr. Reasonable. I mean, we know from various cues they send us that he's, this guy is going to be the villain unless they subvert expectations, which they don't.
Right.
But he still comes across, as this plausible guy. He's a reasonable guy. He's got a reasonable sounding story, at least when you first hear it. And I like that. I like that he's not just mustache twirling from the beginning.
Yes. And so Garros also dismisses Rian's concerns as, for the disease, saying, oh, it's just because I was new here that's when the disease struck. This is pre-industrial. These diseases come up all the time, and I'm just a convenient excuse. So Rian says it was some kind of airborne contagion. That's what, by the way, some kind of.
Although it's not. It's actually waterborne, just like the cholera in 1854.
Exactly.
As we'll find out.
So T'Pol and Archer are back in the apothecary shop with Rian, and while Archer is chatting her up, T'Pol is surreptitiously examining Rian's experiments and her notes and all her other things that she's going to then take back up to the ship and talk about with Phlox.
I love how clumsy T'Pol is in her investigation of everything in Rian's lab. I mean, it's obvious she's going around doing stuff. Rian has to notice this.
Yeah. Even to the point of dipping what looked
litmus
like
paper.
A litmus paper, to take a sample of Rian's samples, and which is where she and Phlox discover that the sickness is caused by a contamination of the water supply by a toxic industrial lubricant.
Tetracyanate 622.
Yes, which sounds really bad because it has cyanate in it. And tetra. That means it's got to be 4 of something. That's right. And we all know
this is scarier than monocyanate. It's 4 times as scary.
Exactly. I mean, it's chemicals. So Archer and Rian then go and surveil the shop at night to see about the pickups or deliveries that are going on. And when they're talking, the translator stops working. So to cover it up, Archer kisses her while he's trying to fix the communicator. And then, I just did it to, hide. Someone was coming. And I'm like, wow, like today, this would not fly in today's, TV making.
Well, they've been hinting at him and her having a romance. What strikes me is how understated it is compared to Captain Kirk.
That's
true. I mean, this is the much more restrained, civilized 80s or 90s, I guess, compared to the wild 60s of television.
Right.
But this is the setup this is the payoff for the setup of what if one of our translators goes out.
Yep.
And so instead of so Hoshi can't be here to help out in this situation because she's already been abducted from the plot and we're only halfway through. She does not appear later in this episode. So Hoshi is just irrelevant to this episode after that first couple of scenes.
And so you have to tap the communicator a couple of times to get it to work right, apparently. So I'm not sure what he's doing, but
he's just
got to
resetting
reboot it.
Yeah, he's reboot. Force quit the app and then restart it. I completely understand. So they end up following this guy who took some boxes from the shop in the dead of night, and he takes them out into the countryside. And as they're about to examine them, a light from above appears, and then they float up into the air, which is classic alien abduction imagery, which I thought was kind of funny.
I like that. I thought that was kind of a good touch because obviously you could see the tractor beam and everything, but it's just that how many stories are there of cows floating in the air because the aliens are tractor beaming them up.
Exactly. It's very X-Files.
In the 19th century, the equivalent during the Great Airship Mystery of the 1890s was one using basically a lasso to grab a cow and haul it up.
Nice.
So, but the Malorian, the colleague of Garros, has seen them and shoots at them with his phaser pistol of some sort. Archer goes after him, and there's a big, fisticuff battle, and Archer gets the best of him, and the Malorian's mask is torn. It turns out he's a lizard alien. So now we have lizard alien reptilian conspiracy theory brought into this as well. All of the great conspiracy theories.
Well, it's clear that these Malorians are the aliens from the series V.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's right. That's right. It did look surprisingly like those aliens. And so this is where Archer has to explain, yes, I'm an alien too, and I'm not really, but I'm not a lizard dude, so don't worry about it. He doesn't actually say that.
I'm the good romantic kind of alien that it's okay to kiss.
Yes. I'm not some crazy lizard. So they go back to the curio shop, and they've taken the Malorian's equipment, which apparently includes a key that Archer knows how to operate somehow, and they find the alien equipment, including the reactor, and there's a whole mining facility down there. And it turns out the Malorians are mining the planet for some compound used in making explosive. So at least to their credit, they didn't just show up and take over this planet of pre-warp people who probably could not have withstood an alien invasion, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is like if colonial powers went into colonized powers and didn't colonize them.
Yeah, they just kind of secretly took the things they wanted from them without letting them know. Now, it still would be bad. I mean, these resources do belong to the Akali, their planet. But, it could be worse. Now, they should have... Well, because if you back up a bit and say, well, what if they didn't cause this disease and infection and ailment? Would it be so bad? I mean, would it?
Yeah, I mean, these people have no use for whatever it is they're mining out of there.
Right. I mean, in the future they might, in some in a couple centuries, but not now. They don't.
Of course, there's the question though of assuming this mineral exists in the entire planet. Why exactly did they set up in the middle of a city?
Well, that's one of the logic-based questions one would ideally want answered. Also, why don't you just get this from an asteroid? I mean, anything you can find on a planet, you can find on an asteroid, and it'll be easier probably to get it than hide from the native civilization and get it.
Especially since they're only hauling it out 3 crates every 2 or 3 days. So that's really not a lot of the material they're actually getting out of the ground either.
That is a lot of work to get. That must be some very expensive material, very difficult to find. So in any case, Archer needs to lower this dampening field, the shielding around the curio shop in order to
transport out the reactor, which is that's how they're going to shut down the mining operation. My first thought was shut down the reactor. If you want to get rid of the mining operation, that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to transport it. Okay, great for once. But then they have to bring down the dampening field that's keeping them from scanning the shop. And they have this blue or yellow button dilemma.
Right.
where they one button, they don't know what it does. They figure either the blue or the yellow button will take down the dampening field and they can beam out the reactor. But they don't know which one it is. And of course, since Rian and Archer are there having their sort of romantic adventure together, you know the woman's going to be right.
Yeah.
Because that's the way this works.
Well, and it's an interesting that they have to kind of muddle their way through these cultural assumptions about how another culture, how another civilization would label things and indicate things on a screen, which is, I think, one of the things that Enterprise does better than some of the other Star Trek episodes, which is, we can't just assume we understand alien control panels as quickly. Now, of course, we still have a 45-minute episode, so they have to go through things very quickly. But you're right, she does defer to him, probably because of his advanced technological background as an alien, but he chooses.
It's like, how many control panels have you interacted with before?
Yeah.
But as they say in Indiana Jones, he chooses poorly. So that it sets off the alarm and it locks them down inside, and now they have to figure out how to get out of this situation.
And it summons a weapons platform ship from the other side of the planet that Enterprise couldn't see because it was in a geostationary orbit.
Yes, it never gets better with this, because this happens to Kirk in Wrath of Khan, where Khan was on the other side of the planet and they couldn't detect him. I mean, it's every time. So
the first thing you do when you move into orbit is you send out the auxiliary drone satellite, so you have complete mapping of the battle space.
Exactly. So Garrus now contacts Enterprise, and as his ship approaches, he tells Enterprise that Archer's dead, and so they should just leave, and then they fire a warning shot at Enterprise.
Yeah, it's like, dude, what culture are you from that telling them their leader, falsely telling them their leader is dead, is an advantageous strategy?
Yeah, there's no reason to stay. You should go.
It's like, isn't this going to like prompt an inquiry or something?
Well, and then he does the opposite to Archer. He says, he talks to Archer. He says, I've told the Enterprise to send a shuttle to pick you up, so you should come out now. It's like, oh, sure, of course, yeah, no problem. Like, why is he lying? Like, at this point, why isn't he just opening the door and coming in and taking him?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. This is a really weak spot in the writing where Garrus's logic is not at all clear, and he seems to be at cross purposes with himself.
And this is, I mean, the thing about telling him that he's dead is to set up the conflict between T'Pol and Tucker. I mean, that's literally all it is.
Yeah.
And so that's also another weak point, I think, in this series at this point, which is Tucker commits mutiny. He should be thrown in the brig because T'Pol is in command. And it's like she says to Ensign Helmsman,
Merriweather.
Merriweather. Can never remember his name.
Oh, yeah.
Merriweather, prepare to leave orbit. She didn't order him to leave orbit. She said prepare to leave orbit. And Tucker belays the order.
Belay that order. I know. Yeah.
And then when she overrules him, he contacts engineering, tells him to get ready to vent the nacelles. They're in a battle situation, and he's about to cripple the Enterprise out of some sort of peak.
Actually, I didn't take it that way. I thought he was planning a strategy move to deal with the aliens, and the venting of the nacelles had something to do with that. Because they don't say we'll be crippled if we vent those nacelles.
Well, in other episodes, when they've talked about venting nacelles, it meant that they could not warp. They couldn't go to warp. When you're venting the warp plasma.
He's basically trying to stop T'Pol from taking the ship out of orbit and abandoning the captain. And that was his way of doing it. It's basically like saying, turn off the engine on a car. Or you think you're going to leave, I'm going to turn off the engine, take the keys. Now try.
That's even worse then, but that did not come across clearly. I took it as some kind of stratagem.
Oh, okay.
That he was proposing an alternative stratagem to just leaving.
No, he was throwing a temper tantrum.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I dislike about what they've done with Tucker in this first season is he's so suspicious of, and it's fine for him to be suspicious of T'Pol and the Vulcans, but sometimes they just go too far, and it's like, this should never, there should be consequences for this. And they've done that in other episodes, but in this one, just over the top.
Yeah, at a minimum, this is rank insubordination, if not mutiny.
Right. So they find out, they go to shoot back at the alien, the Malorian ship, but it's got some kind of energy shielding. Sorry, I just got to keep pointing it out because I had to amuse myself while I was watching this. So,
by the way, T'Pol also says she has no intention of leaving.
yes.
So why did you order Ensign Mayweather to prepare to leave if you have no intention of doing that thing? I tried to rationalize it as maybe the reptiloid aliens can sense them preparing to leave and will think they're complying until they don't, but they didn't explain any of that.
No.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah,
it came across as just something. It's like she's really going to leave, and that sets up the conflict with Trip.
Right. There was no sense of there was a stratagem that she was planning for. It just gets kind of left there. You're right. That's true. So they're going to once Archer gets the shielding down, they're going to beam up the reactor, and this is actually kind of a neat bit of strategy. They're going to beam it up, but I'll beam it in front of the Malorian ship and then shoot it and blow it up, and that will be enough to disable the Malorian ship, and they can then get away. So, and that's what they do. They beam it up and blow it up in front of the Malorians. But that's not the end of things, because Archer and Rian get in a phaser battle on a city street with Garrus and his guys.
And we have this cut from their cowering in the basement with the antimatter reactor to now they're just walking down a street together, vaguely, hurriedly, and hoping not to be noticed.
Right. I'm not sure why Garrus didn't have his guys surrounding the shop to make sure they couldn't get away, but whatever.
Well, how about just like being there at the door, so as soon as it opened, he was ready to come in.
Exactly. So Rian comes up with the idea. She says, "Hey, that oil lamp above them is full of oil. If you shoot it with something hot, it could explode and knock them out." Which is, again, she saves the day with her superior knowledge of tactics, and they knock out Garrus. And the whole thing ends with a finger wagging at the Malorians. Make sure you leave and don't come back. But we're told the Vulcans will look in on the Akali from time to time to make sure that the Malorians keep their promise. But I'm like, seriously? I mean, that's it? I mean, I'm not sure what else they can do, because the Malorians are technologically superior to Enterprise. So I'm not sure they can force them to do something different, but that's kind of the way it is, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And that actually would have been nice if they had explored it a little more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because it's like, this is the reality of frontier space.
Right.
We can arrange for someone maybe to come and visit you, but I'd suggest you get on warp drive really fast.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that would be an interesting aspect of it, is giving them the ability to defend themselves.
They did mention that they had knocked out all the weapons, so presuming, of course, you don't see it on screen, but as soon as the shields are knocked down, then they start just blasting at all the hard points of the weapons on the ship.
But they'd go away, fix their ship, come back. I mean, I just it's a hole in the writing. That's all. It's just illogical.
But
hole.
We can't be distracted by such things, because we've got to get to the final kiss of this episode.
Captain's got to get the girl.
Yes, the Archer Kirk rule, which is that so at the end he has to say goodbye to Rian, and there's no hint that he's ever going to come back. But there's just this.
There's also no hint that it ever went farther than kissing.
Right.
Because the first time he only kisses her, theoretically, to cover the communicator glitch, and she brings it up the second time. So apparently they, like, is your communicator going to malfunction again or something? And and so they apparently have not kissed since. So this has not gone to Kirk level extent.
This is true. Yes. So one of the things I should mention about this episode, the sort of behind the scenes, is this was filming during the events of 9/11, 2001. And the creators of the show, the people behind the show, have said that there's a moment in the filming where you could see a change in the demeanor of the actors, because they this part of it was before the attack and this part was after, and then there's this as he sees it. I mean, maybe as viewers we don't see it, but as someone who was there, he sees it. He can see, sort of, as he says, the light goes out in their eyes as during the from one scene to the other. There's not as much energy in it from the actors, because how they feel about what had happened in the terrorist attack. So I thought that was an interesting little backstory. I didn't notice it as watching it, it's interesting to see.
Also, the way that they produce television today, they don't produce an episode in sequential order. They from the beginning of the plot to the end of the plot, they skip around in the plot based on what sets they need to use.
Right.
So that light in their eyes may actually come and go throughout the episode, making it harder to discern.
Right. In fact, sometimes in some shows they film multiple different shows at once, episodes at once. So that would be interesting. So, any other thing you want to add to it, Father Cory? Anything left on this one?
Nope, nothing here.
Jimmy?
It was there. It wasn't horrible. This was less painful than the Breaking the Ice episode, but it also was just kind of there. And, it was fine, but it wasn't anything to write home about.
One small Easter egg in this one. The Malorians as a race. There's a bit of an in-joke from the original series, The Changeling. Remember Nomad, the probe? That was one of the species wiped out by Nomad. So apparently these guys probably don't come back to terrorize the Akali because Nomad takes them out. So
maybe that's what they were wanting the explosives for. And maybe Archer has doomed their civilization now.
Oh, could be. That'd be interesting. Anyway. All right. I think that should do it for this episode. We want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Derek F., James B., Matthew D., Evan S., and Marika D. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week and takes out all of my flubs. Right, Victor? Right? All right, so that's it from us. What did you think of this Enterprise episode called Civilization? We'd love to hear from you at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or via email, trek@sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing another long-named Star Trek Discovery episode, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Dom, and live long and prosper.
Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, if I don't have what you're looking for, I'm certain I can find someone who does.